Last week was the 10-year anniversary of the collapse of Lehman Brothers. That was considered by many to be the beginning of the 2008 subprime mortgage crisis. It was considered by economists to be the worst recession or financial crisis since the Great Depression. And I am predicting that we're going to, within the course of the next several years, see another one on the same level, if not larger. I'm going to lay out my case, my reasons, and hopefully you can understand what I'm trying to convey here. Now, during the Reagan era, or the beginning of it, you had the concept of trickle down economics become something that was implemented. So much so that it literally became its name is now Reaganomics. That's what that concept is considered. And this is effectively the idea that if people at the top have more money, they will let it be able to make more businesses and do things with it that are beneficial to the economy. Now, Reaganism is actually or at least trickle down economics is still in effect. That is why we have 76% of Americans living paycheck to paycheck. That is why we have Bezos getting millions of dollars in a day while his employees sometimes won't see that even after working for the same company year after year. It is a system that is geared toward that group at the top getting more and more with the idea presented by defenders that are actually aware of what's going on, that supposedly they will feel inept to make businesses for these people to work and somehow get paid the same amount. And at the height of our the a realistic economic boom that wasn't tied down to artificial inflation, you had people working manufacturing jobs, CEOs that made sometimes 10 times more than the um, average pay of the worker, whereas now we're talking hundreds of times more. As I said, Bezos is making ridiculous amounts. But a lot of times when you argue that concept, you have people who will say, you just want to go after the rich for being rich. No, I understand that the rich have a power hold that is very simple to understand. This is a concept that is relating to the oligarchy, where when they talk about free market capitalism, they're talking about, I'm going to pay this politician so that when they get in office, they can completely deregulate anything that would restrict me from getting as much cash as possible. That's why you have Amazon hiring people to work part time as opposed to full, because they're trying to see how many people they can string along and not have to pay in full. How many individuals they can uh, get to go along with whatever they're selling and not entirely have to fulfill the benefits of. But getting back to this concept, when you hear Trump talk about, and his supporters too, this great economy, it's a lot like what has become known as the boom bust cycle. Now, you had the Roaring Twenties, which was followed by the Great Depression. You had the deregulation of the banks with the repeal of Glass-Steagall. I think it's Graham Leach Bailey that Clinton signed right before he left office. The second last full year he left office, and then not even 10 years later, what do we get? Um, the Lehman Brothers going down, and then effectively the beginning of the subprime mortgage crisis. So there really is no disputing, as far as in the minds of people who are objective, that regulating the banks, or rather deregulating them, has not produced a desirable result. But you have to understand, when people argue for wealth being redistributed toward individuals who are at the bottom, you were talking about a much more effective system of just living as a country. You have these companies are making products that, thanks to stagnant wages, these people cannot afford. So, for example, the national minimum wage is still $7.25. Name one thing that is a utility that you can buy working for, let's say, a day with that wage. Now, in my state, for example, California, you would need to make, I believe it's $22, $23 to an hour to afford a two bedroom apartment. Now, that is a marginal increase, and that's what I've tried to argue. People will always tell you, "Oh, you increase the wages, everything will go up." Bleh. No, the reality is that these companies pay out the politicians to leave the wages the way they are, so they can get employees to work for less than they're worth, and try to seek out more and more places to string them along to get more cash from. It's just this game that they're playing. And if you want to raise it at the same time of raising it, you implement price controls which stipulate it will be a crime to increase your prices now that the wages have increased. That's the whole reason we even have that concept. So it's been that idea has been disproven repeatedly. And again, no one's talking about, oh, take it from 7 to 70 an hour. No, it's more nonsense spewed out by people who want to keep the system going. But the core premise of this is that when you have individuals who can't afford, most people, 63% can't afford $1,000 emergency. A person actually had the audacity to defend that by saying, "Oh, majority of people around the world," blah, blah, blah. But we're talking about within the United States. And we know, we have cars that cost thousands of dollars, student loan debt, this thing that people have attached to them for the rest of their lives until they pay it off. That's irredeemable. It's all going to that same idea, or that same end result of individuals having to cut back on buying things because of stagnant wages and other costs. So again, student loan debt in the trillions. I believe it's somewhere in the 30 trillions for healthcare, for how much we've spent. And people still have the nerve to tell you that if that getting rid of the for-profit system will is somehow evil socialist behavior. That nonsense. But you get the idea. These things are crutches that are piling up because the majority of people cannot afford to do without them. People are still going to work the terrible jobs, but they definitely are going to cut back on their costs. So when you have a country where a minority of people can afford to deal with the escalating prices and stagnant wages because of their for whatever means, they're in the richer, the rich group. When it's so small and everyone else is just sitting around and unable to get this stuff, like most of us, that means you have an artificial economy. So it's stimulated by that tiny group of people going around and messing with stuff and going, yeah, I'll buy this and buy that. But it's not; these are not the numbers that are needed for it to make sense. I mean, think about this. If you're an employee at, let's say, Amazon, and the average product that is distributed by your company is $15, and your workers can't afford to pay that because they're making $7 an hour, why would you? What would possess you to think, yeah, it's a good idea for me to have products that the people working here can't even afford? Um, and that does not make sense in the mind of anyone who's reasonable. But we're talking about purposeful, irrational behavior, which is what crashed it in the first place, and it's going to be what crashes it again. See, you have these places like Fox Business, CNBC, which are designed to talk about the economy, speak about it, say what's going on, and none of them are discussing this topic. They're leaving it completely up to Conjure to say, "Oh yeah, the economy's doing great. Oh, this is so wonderful." And then when it crashes, they're going to go, "Who could have seen this coming?" And you look at the numbers. You look at, again, 76% of people living paycheck to paycheck, 63% of people able to afford $1,000 emergency, cars costing thousands of dollars, um, apartments, at least over here, costing 1,800 you know, per month. It's just this thing where they can't seem to figure out, well, the aggregate anyway in California, this thing that they try to pretend as though they're not familiar with the failed system that is geared toward the group at the top, because the group at the top is only concerned about themselves. And so when we have this recession occur, and it's either going to be next year or the year after that, at the latest, if Trump gets 8 years, it'll definitely be while he's in office. But my point is that the later this thing comes, the more you'll have people expressing disbelief and trying to figure out how this could have happened. But it's always going to tie back to the fact that the only people seeing any increase in their wealth are those at the top. We've talked about reasons for why people are poor, reasons for why people are, struggling, and they have to do with healthcare costs, with, again, student loan debt. It's a house of cards that is going to tumble because the bottom, which is that group that is a majority of us, the ones that are not fortunate enough to have loads and loads of dollars, cannot afford to adequately subsidize the current market. And the reason nothing is being done to change this is because the people at the top are, for as rich as they are, which a lot of it is due to inheritance. We've been over that before. They're not smart enough to figure out, hey, wait a second. If I'm gonna sit here and be sitting at the top of this the spectrum of net worth in this country, surely I need to make sure that this that my company thrives by having people actually be able to afford the products. But because they're so greedy and they want to make as much money as possible, they're going to find ways, such as keeping stagnant wages, of making people be unable to ever have a hope of catching up to where they are, or just coming within any margin. Like I said, you used to have it to where it was 20 times more a CEO would make than their employees. Now it's hundreds of times. The 200 million that Bezos gets in a week or a day or whatever, however that's distributed, a lot of people will not, most people won't see that in their lifetime. And that's not me, downing them at all. It's me saying, realistically, you cannot subsidize this market. Now, a lot of times people go to victim blaming. They say, oh, those poor people need to stop spending so much. There was a guy who commented on a post of mine who said something, something, people have children and get married. Well, something, something, getting, first of all, getting married, if you don't have a ceremony, is only $50 at the courthouse. But that's how like stupid that comment was. But also, even if you did have a child, two people who have, it's again, I'm supposed to believe that at no point in the U.S. Basically, that's done to keep trying to play this game of this is all the fault of the person. The system isn't what's failed; it's the people that have failed. Everybody's just lazy. The 43% of the homeless that go out and work every day and still live in a box are just lazy, and they're going to keep doing this until that bubble burst, and suddenly these banks are screaming for another bailout. So when this great recession hits us, I want it to be known that we knew it was coming. We knew the reasons it was coming, and we figured out that all this talk about ooh the great economy is a bunch of nonsense. It is a house of cards that is only benefiting that group at the top, while everyone right here and down here has to keep struggling year after year. And to all these networks that are sitting back and going to Trump's economy, they're not telling you objectively what's going on. This is a flawed right wing trickle down economic system that is going to burst, and when it does, is likely going to see the rich get another bailout welfare from those who have been struggling and actually deserve to have some assistance. And by the way, if people who are at the bottom were looking for a handout, why would they want higher wages? You have to work for those. But again, no level of competence, no level of intelligence, no ability to discern what is fact and what is not. It's just more stupidity, more talking points. And there's no objective way of seeing this. I will fully admit, because all this stuff is political. Obama contributed to this by not going after the banks. And so did the president before him, George W., and the one after him, Trump. It is a corporate gangbang, and we're not in it. But these people who call themselves supporters of whoever need to wake up and realize that this is a fundamental problem that stems from the corruption of the politicians they allowed to ascend to the highest office in the land, and to the Senate, and to the governorships. These are all tied together. If you had governors that didn't go and go, I got to get some dollars, you could actually get a higher wage. If you had senators that didn't go, I got to get some dollars, you could actually get, the war economy to finally be over by ending in these seven countries we're currently bombing. But they don't care. So we're going to have this recession. It's going to be a direct result of the corporate Democrats and Republicans that kept voting to deregulate the banks even further than Dodd-Frank and completely amend that bill altogether with useless nonsense. And when it happens, people are going to react with shock, with confusion, with terror. And you're going to keep being reminded of why these things are important. I feel sympathetic to the person who is so caught up with having to work their 2, 3, 4 jobs you know, that they can't go and read and research this stuff and sit at a computer all day and try to figure this out. I don't have a problem with them. But my problem comes from the fact that I've seen plenty of people who want to accept that this system is the best that we can do. And no one's talking about socialism, no one's talking about capitalism. We're talking about a an agenda by those at the top to keep those at the bottom as below the belt as possible while they get as high as they can. Bezos realistically would not lose. He probably wouldn't still be be like wealthy whatever, but he would definitely be rich if he paid his workers a higher wage, and his company would do much better because the people could actually afford the products that are being sold to them. Amazon is not some evil entity to me. They are a company that because of the people in power treat the ones that are not like subhumans. But they do it because they have the greed that is associated with the oligarchy. I'm going to make sure me and my buddies do well while you and everybody that you care about stays at the bottom. So you heard it here. I predict a recession within this following year, the year of the presidential election or the one after that. Either way, if Trump's in office, his approval rating is going to be just like George W. It's going to sink. Then 10 years later, people forget and go, "Oh, he was such a great guy." Then they remember and go, "Oh, he was such a bad guy." But it should truly be about figuring out the fact that both parties are playing into a corrupt system that is designed to screw over anyone who's not in the corporate gangbang.